morning and welcome to Highway Christian Fellowship Online. I'm Pastor Ralph, and it's a joy for me to be welcomed into your home and be part of this day today. We trust that today's message will be an encouragement to you in your walk of faith. We believe that God has something special for you, and He has brought us together today for His purpose to speak into your heart and into your life. If you would like prayer, if you would like a pastor to call, or perhaps you would like to give to the ministry of Highway Christian Fellowship, you can do so by connecting with us at hcfsydney.ca, and you can follow the links and you can connect with us right there safely and securely. Now, let's enjoy God's Word together.
So it's really amazing, to see where God has taken the ministry of Village of Hope. Not so much because of the efforts of Nancy and I, but because of our partnerships across Canada with POC churches like yours. You've walked it with us. The stories you hear, the videos you'll see, they're your stories. They're not our stories. Well, they're our stories. They're not my stories, because you've been part of that and making that happen. Nancy, unfortunately, drew the short straw and ended up in Winnipeg today. No offense to those of you who are from Winnipeg, but we have a partnering church in Winnipeg, and they have a big promotion Sunday today, and she had to go and help them with the sponsorship program. It's a church that sponsors a lot of kids, so we've kind of shifted to an online process, so they needed her there to help. So I said, well, you go, I'll sacrifice, I'll go to Sydney. Came over early yesterday and walked around Sydney, It's such a beautiful community. As you can see on that slide, 25 years ago, we started with 43 children in a small location up in Kitwe, Zambia. Today, we are in 10 centers in 5 different countries. You can see there Burundi, Tanzania, Zambia, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. And we can go to the next slide. Many of our more mature, established centers have been launching out with satellites, going to communities where there's need. So VOH Zimbabwe has 2 centers that feed hundreds and hundreds of children every day, provide discipleship programs for them, early childhood development. And we have one new one in Tanzania, and it's kind of a pilot project. We had a very small building in a very vulnerable community. And what we've discovered over the years is that, governments have established schools throughout the various countries and communities. But one thing that's really lacking is early childhood development. The lack of daycare, the lack of preschool. So when a child lands in grade 1, it would be equivalent to a child landing in, preschool here. They've never held a pencil. And in fact, our kids are doing that at home. So by the time they even end up in preschool, they've counted, they've done the ABCs. And so we've started a small daycare center in the community, working with children for 2 years. That's our commitment to their caregivers. And it's like a preschool. We're teaching them to count and do their alphabets, but we're feeding them. and look, providing health care if needed, but really getting them ready to go to school. In that community, government schools are free. We assist them with their uniforms and that sort of thing and send them off. But instead of having the expense of building a school, we're focusing on preparing the kids. And at that young age, they're being introduced to Jesus and the gospel, right from that early age. And even once the 2-year program's over and they go off to school, we're trying to figure out now, how do we stay connected with those kids and probably start like after school tutoring programs to help them with the subjects they're struggling with. And so we're trying to see if that's a way for us to reach more kids without having the expense of building an entire center. So that, between the 10 centers and our satellites, we've grown from 43 kids to over 7,000, and it's, and there's probably another 1,000 kids on top of that we've had come through our programs that, are now adults. And, it's a privilege for Nancy and I, because we've been, on the journey a long time to, when we're living, when we're in Lusaka, where our home away from home is, and you're going through the city, once in a while you hear, "Hey, Auntie Nancy, Uncle Serge, remember me?" And the great big guy standing there. "No, I don't. It's me, Joseph." "What? You were this big the last time I saw you." And they're doing all sorts of things. We run into one of our favorite coffee shops and bakery that we go to. Well, the manager is one of the kids that graduated from the school up in Kitwe, And to watch him, he started as a baker, and then he was working the till. We watched him over the years, now he's one of the assistant managers of that cafe. Nancy was flying to Zimbabwe about a month or so ago, and she's at the airport, and she hears, "Auntie Nancy." And she looks around like, she's flying to Zimbabwe. She's not expecting to run into a Village of Hope kid. "It's me, Joseph." And Joseph was a kid that both Nancy and I rescued from a very rural village outside of Kitwe. Him, his sister, and his cousin had lost the parents. There was a very elderly grandmother and grandfather that were looking after them, but there was no electricity, no running water, no schools, nothing out there, and they were looking for help. So Joseph and his sister and cousin came to live at VOH Kitwe and grew up there, and he did very well at school. He graduated, got a scholarship at the local university, and on and on. He ended up with the Chinese government. He was sponsored to go to Beijing. He met some people, influential people there, and they said, "Well, you stay. We'll sponsor you for your master's degree." So he spent a year in language studies, fluent in Chinese. Like, if you close your eyes and he speaks, you don't know you've got a Zambian in front of you. And when he graduated, he could go anywhere in the world. He said, "They were lined up, Uncle. Lined up. I could go anywhere. I wanted to go back home." So he took a job with Huawei in Lusaka, Zambia. Now he's the district procurement officer. So he's on the plane with Nancy flying to Zimbabwe, and then he's on his way flying to South Africa because he's going around doing his job. Like, it's just really amazing, and you think, if he wasn't rescued 25 years ago, where would he be? And here he is flying around Southern Africa, and a person of influence. That's the beautiful part of it, right? He's influenced. He works in an office of all Chinese, and he's got integrity. He's a hard worker, very intelligent, and he's having an influence there. So it's really exciting to see. In 2020, 2019, we began talking with an organization called Under the Same Sun, Christian businessman from Langley that started this about 15 years ago. He is a person with albinism. We used to call them albinos, but we don't call them that anymore. They're people with albinism. And he himself is a person with albinism. But he started this work in Tanzania 15 years ago because he heard of all these children that were being mutilated because they were people with albinism, and the belief system and the worldview of this. And so he started speaking up in Tanzania on behalf of the people with albinism there. And as he was doing that, he also understood that to change a mindset, you got to change the individual. So he started educating children with albinism, getting them into private schools where they would be safe. And then as they graduated from high school, getting them into university and colleges, and then getting them jobs in government and in business, get influence. We're not stupid. We just have bad eyesight. That was the big myth. People with albinism are dumb. They can't do anything. Well, they're extremely intelligent, they just had bad eyesight, so they couldn't see the board. That's why they were always failing. So he fits them. You'll see in the video, he fits them with glasses, and they got special needs for their skin. And so they've been doing this work for 15 years, but it was getting to the place it was very difficult. I think they were working with 250 kids, and it was getting very difficult for them to implement the programs. The advocacy work had wound down because Tanzania had become safe. But he needed a partner on the ground to help implement, and he heard about Village of Hope, and we met and we talked. So in 2020, we formed this partnership together in Tanzania. And we've learned a lot working with Peter Ash and Under the Same Sun. So I just want to show you a video. This came from a summer camp that we put on in August for the children with albinism. You can play it now.
I know that I have plans for you, says the Lord. Great plans to prosper you, to do you good and not to harm, to give you future, to give you hope.
These kids need to feel loved. They need to feel cared for during the summer months by a family of some sort. And Under the Same Sun was really that family. Persons with albinism have a unique set of health challenges that we try and address as a charity. The major issues that we've addressed throughout the last 10-15 years has been both skin care and eye care. Those are two major areas that we do, so we try and see all 240 of our students here on campus. So they see our two optometrists that we have on site, as well as our two dermatologists. This is our first summer camp where we have introduced hearing clinics with audiologists. And so what we've noticed is a lot of our students in the Under the Same Sun education program are actually struggling with hearing challenges. And so we wanted to look into that and see, is there a link between albinism and hearing loss? And so we've actually brought in a doctor from the United States to help lead a Tanzanian team here and start doing a little bit of initial research into that area.
When I first started coming to Tanzania over a decade ago, it was so hopeless. And I genuinely thought, yeah, this isn't actually able to be solved in my lifetime. This will be 80 years, it'll be 100 years, it'll be 150 years before we actually see any meaningful change in Tanzanian hearts and minds. I'm sitting here a decade later, to tell you that by God's grace and with your help and support, it's actually happening. When I talk to people in Tanzanian society now, they have a high understanding of what albinism is. They know that it's a genetic condition. They have a high level of respect for people because there's people in the highest levels of government as politicians who have albinism. And so just over the course of these last 15 years, just seeing the incredible progress that's been made in changing the hearts and minds of this country is actually unbelievable to me. I actually stand in awe of what we've been able to accomplish. It's been a big change, and it's really encouraging to see.
So you see kids, teenagers, and adults now, worshiping God. When you hear their stories, these should be very angry people, very bitter people, very vengeful people. When you hear how they've had to flee for their lives at a very young age, how they've been attacked, how their bodies have been mutilated. We have a little girl in Zambia that we helped with Under the Same Sun. We actually helped 5 children from Tanzania come to New York City, where there's a special hospital there that for free will operate and fit prosthetics for these kids. So you meet this little girl, just beautiful little girl, but her arm was severed right here, and she's got a prosthetic now. But you watch her, like she's interacts and plays with all the other children because they're in a place where they can experience love. They know that through people like Peter Ash, through organizations like Under the Same Sun and Village of Hope, and that they're loved. And it's through that love that they're introduced to the love of God, and they start having this understanding that they are valued in the kingdom. And to see these I think there was about 200. It was the first time they brought a camp together of all the kids within the program. So it was about 200 plus kids there. And just to see them, full of joy and enthusiasm. And they had art classes for them. And they brought a teacher from Canada that specialized with low vision children to help them be artists, even though their eyesight may not be as good as other children. When they had music, they did drama. My favorite was the karate class. So there was a group of Tanzanians that came up who are karate experts, and they were teaching these kids, self-defense, and it just builds confidence in them, and just to watch them interact and to see them worshiping God, filled with love, they're just the opposite of what they should be. They're not angry, they're loving, they're not vengeful, they're compassionate. And it's just, but advocacy work comes with a price. Even to this day, when the founder of Under the Same Sun comes to Tanzania, he has a private bodyguard. When he started this advocacy work, there were threats on his life because he was getting in the way of people's livelihood. See, the witch doctors were making a lot of money from buying and selling body parts of people with albinism. And Peter told me, he said, in the early days, Sergio, he said, it was dark. He said, I would come to Tanzania. I wouldn't see any headway in the work we were trying to do. He said, I would just have to go and see. He said, I don't know. He lost count of how many mutilated bodies he'd found. And then he would go to the police, and the police wouldn't do anything about it because the police were in on it, But that's all changed now. 15 years later. And I've learned a lot about advocacy from Peter and Under the Same Sun and the importance of it. And that we, as children of God, should be the ones that are speaking up in our societies, in our countries, for those who don't have a voice. And one thing it's been nagging me for some years, and we're starting to get some momentum in it, is what can we do as Village of Hope to not just create a loving environment and a safe environment for children within the walls of the center, but how do we now go beyond those walls and make the communities where the children live safer for them? And we're starting to take that message out, and primarily working with our child safeguarding policy and helping to train the caregivers about what it means to have an environment that's safe for children. What we discovered was our centers are very safe. So when a child arrives at the center in the morning and comes in, they're very safe. Any harm that happens to a child within a center is what I would call sort of typical child stuff. They fall and scrape their knee, or they get into a bit of a fight between each other. Just the stuff that kids do, right? But there is no abuse. There is no physical abuse. There's no emotional abuse that happens at our centers anymore. We've done away with that through having strong child safeguarding policies, but trainings and seeing our staff's hearts change towards the children. But we discovered that from when a child leaves their home and arrive at the center, it's extremely unsafe. We've had a number of young girls get raped on their way to school in some of our communities. And so we're saying, we have a voice. Let's not just keep our voice in behind our walls. Let's speak it out. And we have credibility. Our oldest center is 25 years old. Our youngest is about 12 years old. So we've got credibility. The communities trust us. And I heard a wonderful story from our center in Malawi at our school. A couple of strangers came to the center 2 different times to pick up a child to take them home. But our child safeguarding officer stepped in and said, "No, we don't know you. No, we're not going to let you take that child. Unless the mother comes and says we can release the child to you, we're not." And this happened a couple of times. So what she did was she called all the caregivers, hundreds of them, to the center and did a workshop with them about the importance of making sure that strangers aren't coming to the school to take your kids, and that's that influence, that's that voice. The fact that they all came was something else, but they listened. And I met with the committee of one of our centers recently, and that center put together a committee from the community. So there were 2 traditional chiefs, 2 civic leaders, a couple of pastors, and 2 sheikhs from the mosques. And here they all are sitting at the table. And what's unifying the conversation is children. And we're talking about the importance of child safeguarding. We're talking about the importance of making this world a safer place, a better place for children. And they're the ones with the influence, right? They're the leaders out there in the community, and they're starting to get it. They're starting to say, can you help us? Teach us how, right? So hopefully we'll see in the next few years not only the VOH centers flourishing, but also the communities changing. I heard a stat recently, and it was from I think, a Swedish psychologist, but he had done some research. And they kind of estimate that since humans have kind of been sort of walking this face of this earth, and of all the billions of people that have lived on this planet, and all the 8 billion that are living here now, more than 50% don't reach adulthood. And we don't realize that. This planet is not a safe place for children. It's not child-friendly. It really isn't. We have one area in Zambia, an extreme western part of Zambia, and they estimate 80% of the children there do not reach the age of 5. And I believe with all my heart that the church is poised to change that. You know, churches are everywhere. They're in every community, right? Unfortunately, sometimes the churches are the most unsafe places for children, as we've seen in history. So we want to leverage our relationship with our churches and start helping them understand what does it mean to be a child-safe place, and what does it mean to have a child-safe community, and have them influence their communities. So that's something that's, very important to us, that we, like under the same sun, do everything we can to make this world a safer place for children. And one thing, we've talked a lot about our child safeguarding policy, and I know here at POC you use Plan to Protect, I think is the we're starting to refer to it as our child safeguarding program, not a policy. We have a policy, and the policy is part of the program. Policies are things you enforce. Programs are things you do. So we do child safeguarding. We are active in making the world a safe place for children. And we're seeing amongst our staff a shift in their thinking when they know that, we have a child safeguarding program. Just like we have a feeding program. Just like we have an education program. We also do safeguarding. And it's proactive. We're seeing the staff. And all our staff live in the community. All our staff, they go to churches in the community. And we're starting to see that influence. Then there's our discipleship program. I think we can go back to the PowerPoint. So this past year, we distributed thousands of Bibles to all the kids at VOH. You can go to the next slide. 4,017 Bibles were distributed. And for a lot of these kids, as we got feedback from the distribution, for a lot of them, this is the first Bible they've ever owned. Not only that, for a lot of them, it's the only Bible that's in their household now. And we did a variety of some of them we had different translations to make sure the kids were able to read and understand, and then we had some picture Bibles for the little kids, But this is something now special, not only for that child, but for the family of the child. To be able to sit down as a family and read the Word of God. Even if it's a picture book, for a lot of these kids, their families, are undereducated, so they're able to appreciate Bibles that are easy to read and understand. Go to the next slide. So you can see young and old all received age-appropriate Bibles at all our centers. So they're able now to read about the things that they learn at the center. I've been heavily involved in the development of our discipleship program over the past 6-7 years for our centers. And at the foundation of our discipleship program, we use the greatest commandment found in Mark 12, that we're to love the Lord our God with all our soul, all our strength, and all our might, everything within us. And that's a pretty easy concept to teach kids. They get it, and they can recite that quite easily. But Jesus also said, love your neighbor as you love yourself. That too is one of the greatest commandments. So we can get that love your neighbor. It's a fairly easy concept to teach kids, how you treat other people. The puzzling part of it, and I've done a lot of research and I've found almost next to nothing, is we are commanded to love ourselves. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And if I've read enough of Jesus' stories and his angles, Basically what he's saying is if you can't love yourself, you're not going to be able to love your neighbor. And I have found a lot of information on loving self. Good stuff. Not flaky, and I'm not talking about a selfish love. You understand what I'm saying. I'm not talking about that we become the center of the universe. No, that doesn't work either. But and so there's lots of good secular stuff out there about loving self. But I've really struggled to find a biblical theology on loving self. What did Jesus mean? Not only Jesus, it goes way back to Leviticus 19. That's where the commandment originated from. To love your neighbor as you love yourself. And so I've been having lots of discussions about this with the kids, trying to understand what do you guys understand? How do you guys see this, right? And they struggle too because, they think right away, well, but that's selfish, isn't it? It's not about me. It should be about others, right? But and I think what it is to see ourselves as God sees us. And God looks at us because God is love. And God looks at us as lovable creatures. Problem is, and sometimes when I look in the mirror, I don't see a lovable creature. I beat myself up. I'm hard on myself. And I notice that when I get into those funks, I'm not very loving to other people. Nancy will say amen. And then sometimes you look in the mirror and you say, I guess you're not so bad after all. God can love you. Can't you love yourself a bit? and to be kind to myself. Remind myself that I'm not perfect, but I'm a work in progress. Many of you seen that book, A Boy, a Mole, a Fox, and a Horse? Oh, you're missing out. Charlie Mackesy. It got turned in, Apple helped him make it into an animated short film, and it won an Academy Award. He does a lot of work in Zambia, relief work in Zambia. But I love his stuff, because this boy and these three creatures, they're on a journey. And obviously the boys had a tough journey, and the horse and the fox and the mole. I like the mole. He's my favorite. What do you want to be when you grow up? Asked the boy. Kind, said the mole. Kind. Little things like that, right? And so sometimes I'm reminded of those things when I look in the mirror. And those are the days that Nancy's the happiest. But when was the last time we read a book about the biblical view of loving yourself? We focus a lot on God's love for us, right? But it's a real challenge at times. And so we're trying to help these kids, especially children who've been abused, traumatized, girls who've been raped. They grow up with shame. They blame themselves for what happened. We work with a lot of kids that have seen a lot of bad things happen in their household, and they blame themselves for it. So if we can help children not only receive the love of God, but to love themselves enough to allow that love to come into their lives and to change them, you end up with what you have in that video of all those children with albinism. And then they go out and love their neighbor as they love themselves. And I think that's what the world needs, is more and more people going out into their communities and loving people. And unfortunately, the world right now is in a hate place. It's in an angry place. It's in a vengeful place. And if we could replace all that with love, I'm still very hopeful. Even when it's the bleakest at times, But I think it's because I've seen the difference this makes in children's lives. The difference it's made to Joseph. The difference it's made to Fatuma. Some of these kids because they've been here, to Sam. And we are poised. I hope before I'm done that we'll see some traction, more traction in these communities where we're working, becoming safer, loving places for children. The children of this planet deserve to be in a place of love and safety and acceptance. And they deserve to be in a place where they can freely receive the love of God without any of these barriers that have been put in their way from the things that we big people have done to them. So pray for us. It's a big job. It's a big task. Changing worldviews, changing cultures. It's not a popular thing these days, but in some cases it's necessary. Right? And it's not just over there. There's things here we need to change. Right? So it's universal. If you're interested in sponsoring a child, we got many kids that still need sponsors. You could pick up a brochure at the table in the back, and then you can take it home and do what I do, ask your spouse how to use a QR code. And also, for many years, coming out of CLA Church in Langley, we've shipped containers with shoe boxes full of things for the kids at Christmas time. We used to call them boxes of love. The cost of shipping a container just skyrocketed through the pandemic and that, so we were unable to do that, but we've continued with a campaign called Christmas Hope Packs, so you could pick up one of these, and again, go home, ask your spouse how to use a QR code, and that'll help you. Or just go to our website. I think you can find it all there. And so what we've done is we've started raising money and sending it to the centers, and the centers build these packs, Christmas packs for the kids. And what that does is it's more cost effective, and we're reaching more kids with Hope Packs than we did when we were shipping by container. And because we negotiate with a lot of the Chinese companies that are over there, so we buy things in bulk, right? So we're buying things locally. It's helping the local economy. We've got kids that come in and work for a day or two to assemble the packs. So it's a real blessing to everybody there, plus the kids that take them home. So this next video, you'll see the story of the Hope Pack from one of our centers last year. But before we play that video, just again, thank you. Is it playing already? Yeah. Thank you again. And if you have any questions or you're interested in sponsoring a child or funding a Hope Pack, I think the Hope Packs are $25. I'll be at the table after the service. So God bless you and thank you.
Thank you for listening to us and being part of this day today. We trust that you have been blessed and encouraged by the Word of God. We believe it's important that we come together. And so if you live in the Peninsula or Sydney area, we would love the opportunity to meet you. We are located at 10364 McDonald Park Road, right off the Pat Bay Highway, in between the ferry and the airport. A warm welcome awaits you and your family. You will not be disappointed. So, if you would like more information, as we said earlier, connect with us at hcfsydney.ca. God bless, and we'll see you again next time.